How do we add signed numbers? Any real number, it's either positive or negative or zero. So if it's a positive number, we can put a plus sign in front of it. Say, for example, positive 3. The plus sign can also be omitted. And we also have negative numbers, and we can put a negative sign in front of it. And negative sign cannot be omitted. And then we also have 0, the symbol for 0 here. So notice that 0 is neither positive nor negative. So how do we add the real numbers? Especially those numbers with the sign. First of all, we can deal with the easy case. Any number plus 0 is always 0. This is an easy rule because 0 means nothing. When we add nothing to a number, it's not going to change this number. So any number plus 0 or minus 0 is itself. Okay, now what about the other numbers? Say how do we multiply two positive or two negative, or maybe one positive, one negative numbers? So we have two rules we're going to follow. There are many different ways to add these numbers. You can use the number line to help you. You can you can also use a real life example to help you. So here we are going to use real life examples to help us memorize the rules. So positive numbers can be think of as credit. So if you have positive 3, that means you have credit in your bank account. But if you have negative 3 in your account, which means you are in debt. So let's look at some examples here. You can do positive 3 plus positive 5. Positive 3, we can maybe do negative 3 plus negative 5. And then we can do one positive, one negative. Positive 3 plus negative 5, or negative 3 plus positive 5. So these 4 problems represent 4 different cases. The first case is the easiest case because the plus signs can be omitted. If we omit the plus sign, this question is just like 3 plus 5. We know it's equal to 8. But to compare to other questions, to summarize the rule later, we're going to keep the plus sign in front of it. And if you use the real life example to explain it, this is like positive means we have credit. So we have $3 credit and then plus $5 credit. And that gives us a still credit, a larger credit. In the second example, negative 3 plus negative 5. And that means negative means debt. So which means we have $3 debt and plus $5 debt. We know we're going to get more debt. Think of a real life example. Say you owe Mary $3 and then you owe Smith $5. And together you will owe $8 debt. And so we are going to, when you add a debt and a debt, you're going to get a larger debt. And to do that, we combine these two debts without the signs. So you're dropping the signs. Just thinking of this as $3 debt plus $5 debt. That's going to give us $8 debt. Because it's debt. Debt means negative. So you're going to have to put a minus sign in front of it. If it's positive, that would be a credit. So these two will become our first rule. Rule number 1. When we add two numbers with the same sign, because plus, they both have plus and plus, or minus and minus. So both credit or both debt. when we add numbers with the same sign, we're going to keep the sign. Plus, 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 still plus. Because credit plus credit, still credit. But minus plus negative, you get negative. Because debt plus debt, you still get debt. So the rule is you keep the sign, and then you're gonna add the absolute value of these numbers. Absolute value it means you drop the sign, so you're just adding 3 and 5 to get 8, adding 3 and 5 to get 8. So this is the rule we summarized. When adding two numbers with the same sign, which means both the same sign could be both positive or both negative. So we will, in the answer we will get, we keep the sign. If it's positive, we keep positive. If it's negative, if both are negative, we keep the negative sign. But then we're gonna add the absolute values, which means only the numbers without the signs. So you're just gonna be adding 3 and 5 and 3 and 5. So when we deal with sign numbers, when we do those operations, we can always do 2 steps. Step 1, check the sign. Do you keep it or do something else? Step 2, you determine whether you're going to add those numbers without the sign or subtract the numbers without the sign. So the second case would be these two. So what if these two numbers have different signs, one positive, one negative? Of course, rule number 1 doesn't work anymore because you cannot keep the sign anymore. So let's see, we can again use the real life examples to help us. Positive means credit. Negative means debt. So if you have some money in your bank account, but then you owe somebody some money, and combining your credit and your debt, were you being credit or were you in debt? That depends on which one is bigger, which one is larger. And so that, for example, the second case, we can go ahead and look at it. So again, the second case is similar. We have $3 debt, but we have $5 credit. So when we combine the credit and debt, whether we're in credit or in debt depends on which one is larger. So first thing, you're going to have to compare them, compare credit and debt. $3 credit, $5 debt. So we have more debt. If we have more debt, and then your credit is not going to be enough to pay that debt. And so that you have $3 in your bank account, but you owe somebody $5. Even if you take out that $3 to pay this person, you still owe this person some money. Okay, because you owe more money than the money you have. So the answer will be negative, because in this case we have larger debt, so which means you're gonna get debt. And then how much more debt? So because you have $5 debt, $3 credit, so you do 5 minus 3, that gives us 2. So 5 minus 3, that gives us the answer 2. So because we have $2 more debt than credit. Similarly, when we do the second case, this time we have more credit, $5 credit, but only $3 debt. So the money you have in your pocket or bank account can pay this person off, and you still have some money left because we have more debt. The answer will be positive. And how much more credit than debt? $2. We still do 5 minus 3. Now let's summarize a rule here. So for the second case, when we add numbers with different signs, whether you're going to get positive or negative depends on which one is larger. So you're going to look at the number without the sign. We also call it absolute value. So the number with the larger absolute value, and you take that sign in front of that number. Say 5 is larger than 3, we take that sign. 5 is larger than 3, we take the sign in front of it. And after that, step 2, we're going to do either addition or subtraction. Previously, when they have the same sign, we always add the numbers without the signs. But this time, we're going to subtract. We take the number 5 minus 3, 5 minus 3. again, without considering the signs in front of them. So now let's summarize the second rule. Rule number 2. So when adding two numbers with different signs, which means one positive and one negative, we take the sign of the number with a larger absolute value. So again, absolute value means the number without the signs in front of them. And so we take the sign of the larger, and then we always subtract. So there are two steps similar to rule number 1. In rule number 1, we keep the sign, but in rule number 2, we pick the sign of the larger. In rule number 1, we add the absolute values, but in rule number 2, we subtract the absolute values. We always subtract the smaller from the bigger. So we can go back to look at these two cases again. So case 1, same signs. When we add numbers with the same sign, keep the sign, positive, 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 negative, negative, negative. And we always add the absolute values, which means the numbers that I circled without the signs. So 3 plus 5, 3 plus 5. But when we deal with the second case, so these two are rule number 1. These two will be rule number 2. In these two cases, they have different signs. One positive, one negative, one negative, one positive. And then we're going to have to take the sign of the larger absolute value. So like 5, and 5 is negative 5. When you take absolute value, you don't have the sign, you just get a 5. Compared to 3, 5 is larger, so we take the sign in front of it. The same thing here, 5, we take the sign in front of it. And then we always subtract the absolute values, so we don't consider numbers in front of them. We just do 5 minus 3 and 5 minus 3. You can, so these are, the rules kind of long, but you can always use real life examples, credit and debt, to help you use those rules. Like I said, so credit plus credit, so you get a larger credit. Because you still, first of all, determine a sign. Credit plus credit, you still get credit. So that's why it's still positive. The larger credit tells you that you have to add the numbers. You do addition, 3 plus 5. Debt plus debt, you get larger debt because you're still in debt. That's why you have to get negative. Credit positive, debt negative. Because you got larger debt it means you have to add the numbers, 3 plus 5, to get a larger number. But then credit and debt, you will compare. So if you have more debt, then you're still in debt. That's why you get negative here. And then how much more debt? You're comparing, you're doing a comparison. You compare your debt and the credit to see the difference. So of course, difference means subtract. So you do $5 debt minus $3 credit. It gives you 2. And similarly, if we have more credit than debt, then the answer will be, we will be in credit. We will get positive. And then how much more credit? We take $5 credit, subtract minus $3 debt, and they give us a $2 more credit, and to do the subtraction. So these are the rules. Again, there are other ways to do those problems. You can use the number and line to do it, but this thing, if you use the debt and credit example to help you, that will make things easier without drawing a number line. And the other thing is, notice in the writing, some of the plus signs can be omitted. For example, the first one I mentioned before, you can simply put 3 plus 5. And I put those signs here so I can summarize the rules. But when we write these problems, if you want, like the first question, we can omit the signs in front of them. The first one can be written as 3 plus 5 equals 8. But the second one, negative sign cannot be omitted, but this plus sign can be omitted. So we can rewrite this question as negative 3 minus 5. It turns into a subtraction question, which will be explained in the next video. And in the third problem, again, the plus sign can be omitted. So I omit that 3. And this plus sign can also be omitted. We get 3 minus 5 equals negative 2. That's, again, a subtraction question, which will be explained later. And the last problem, negative sign cannot be omitted, but there are 2 plus signs. You can omit one of them.